Disclaimer. The following is a video reviewing this week's episode of RuPaul's Drag Race. This is a review of what is presented to us by the producers and nothing more. This is not commenting on who the queens are as people, as I do not know them personally. This is just about what we see on screen. Any hateful comments about or towards the queens will not be tolerated and will be removed. Oh, and also this will obviously contain spoilers about this week's episode, so don't watch it if you haven't yet seen it. With all that said, hope you enjoy this video. Yours truly, ElliXia.
Hello beautiful people, you're watching another Drag Race review with me, ElliXia Q Valentine. This week we are discussing episode 3 of RuPaul's Drag Race UK vs the World Season 1. And boy, what an episode this was. I've seen several people online vocalizing their opinions on this week's episode. It was quite controversial. It definitely has given the season a little bit of a shake as well. Definitely one of those gagged, gooped and all those other sayings that they say. But before we get into that episode, just want to let you know that my name is of course ElliXia Q Valentine. Links for all of my social media can be found in the description. And just a disclaimer of course, as always, please refrain from posting any spoilers in the comments for episodes that have not aired yet. Today's look I've inspired, obviously the runway theme was ... This is actually the only sort of dotty look that I have really. So I figured, well, I might as well use this. This is also a something of an upgrade of a look that I did way back in 2017. It was one of my very first looks actually that I performed in. This is kind of like the sort of redemption of that outfit for me, because I really didn't like the previous time I did it. So I've given it a bit of an upgrade. And without further ado, let's get into the episode. So the episode begins just after the last elimination, as always. Queens decant to the workroom to discuss the elimination that's just happened. We've just said goodbye to Cheryl and it's time for Jimbo to reveal who he chose to be eliminated this week. And it is a very awkward moment when Jimbo reveals that he had actually chosen Jujubee to be eliminated. And you know, it's awkward because, well, Jujubee is right there. And just previously, Jimbo and Jujubee had seemingly struck up some sort of an alliance in which if Jimbo kept Jujubee this week, then Jujubee would save Jimbo in the future should the situation arise. Jujubee is obviously not particularly happy about this revelation. As you can see, some of the other queens are also a bit surprised as well. And Jimbo seems to sort of skirt around the issue a little bit in that sort of, you know, classic Jimbo sense of humour way by saying like, I chose you because you were a good singer and I wanted you at RuPaul. I'm like, is that really the reason why you chose Jujubee, Jimbo? But it is very interesting because of course now everyone in the room is looking at Jimbo differently. And I thought when Jimbo revealed that, I thought, oh my God, you know, Jimbo's cover's been blown, the trust has been broken, and almost like Jimbo's sealed their fate, effectively. It reminds me very much of All Stars 4 when Manila chose to save Latrice over Monet Exchange, despite the fact that Monet was clearly the one who deserved to stay more based on the challenge and the track record. But Manila chose her friend Latrice, and we saw how awkward it was when Manila had to reveal that with Monet still in the room. And as we controversially saw then, in a few episodes' time, that decision did come back to bite Manila. And as soon as that all happened, I thought, the minute Jimbo is in the bottom two, they're going to send them home. But of course we get on to that later on. So then we go into a new day in the workroom and Mo has an announcement. Mo officially tells the other girls that she is now going by the name Mo Hart instead of Monique Hart. And this actually makes more sense now because obviously when the queens were revealed, Mo was calling herself Mo and all the promos were saying that as well. But in episodes 1 and 2 they kept calling her Monique and I was like, what's going on? Like what? So I'm glad that's been cleared up. She says even though like her performance is very female presenting, she wants to be known as a genderless entertainer, and I think, do you know what, good for you, Mo. I support that. And from here on out, there shouldn't be any confusion as to whether she's Mo or Monique. We're then presented with the reading challenge as well. A Drag Race staple, of course, we love the reading challenge, they're always good fun. Always get some great quips in there, as it were. This reading challenge was okay. I often find, I don't know what it is, I don't know if it's the flow, but the UK reading challenges, I generally don't feel they are as strong as the American ones. But we did have some good ones. Janie Giacchetti and Pangina, I thought, had some very good reads. Bagger and Mo, bless them, weren't particularly very good at it. But of course, the queen of reading is Jujubee. You know, Jujubee has taken part in 3 different reading challenges now, and she's won all of them. And there is a reason for that. To be honest, Jujubee season 2 reads were always my favourite until All Stars 5, when Jujubee topped them herself. So if Jujubee's getting nothing else right this season, she's definitely getting the reading right. You can always count on Jujubee to throw some classic shade. Because she does it in such a good way that it's like, it could be mean-spirited, but she does it in such a way that, you know, you don't mind. It's funny. Of course, the best one actually in the reading challenge was Lemon, because Lemon posted her reads on her social medias, and yeah, they were pretty good. But alas, she wasn't there, so Jujubee is the winner. We get given the challenge at hand. It is the musical West End Wendy's, like a faux reality TV show about some faded West End characters that are going for another chance at stardom. Kind of similar in the previous All Star seasons when they did Baddest Bitches in History and when they did VH1 Divas. Very much that thing where it's a musical in which each queen has their own moment to do their thing. This time at least, the queens get to choose their part themselves. So there's no Thought You Thought-esque conspiracy theories about being set up to fail. Well, mostly. And Jujubee, as the mini challenge winner, gets to assign the roles to each queen. And everyone is pretty content with the roles that they have, except of course for Miss Bagger Chips. Bagger does not get the part that she wants. She gets given the role that nobody else wanted because everyone's already claimed theirs. Unfortunately, that is just the way that the cookie crumbles sometimes. You know, like if everyone else chooses their roles and everyone just happens to have one role that they really like, you get left with the last one. And I have to say, and it was said on the episode as well, Bagger's attitude was really, really bad in this episode. I know I said that last week as well, that her attitude was really poor. It was awful this week. If you're a performer, if you're an actor, if you're a drag queen, whatever you are, you're going to have to do roles that you don't necessarily like. I've had to do it, but you do it. It's what you're called to do, so you do just have to get on with it. And it wasn't even a bad role, really. I thought it was fine. Like I've always said, if I was ever on Drag Race and I was ever in the situation of doing a musical or an acting challenge, then I wouldn't really mind which role I was given, because ultimately I'm a professional and I'm an actor, so give me a role and I'll do it, you know? I say that now, because I guess if you're in the situation it might be a bit different, but alas, the roles are distributed and the queens are learning the choreography. Queens being choreographed by the lovely Johannes of Strictly Come Dancing fame. I really, really like Johannes. I think he is a really good dancer to watch. I love watching him. I loved watching him on this recent series of Strictly as well. I think he's great. He's one of my favourite dancers from that show. So it was really lovely to see him. And he's a really good choreographer as well. You know, he was very good at leading the queens through what they had to do. And you know, sometimes you get choreographers on the show who are a bit intimidating and like negative in terms of sort of always focusing on what the queens struggle with. I thought Johannes was really good at, you know, being able to be constructive but also helpful. I especially enjoyed the moment between Jujubee and Johannes when Jujubee was like, "You put it down, I'll pick it up, Dad." I don't mind the choreography scenes when they have a guest choreographer come in actually, because they do just get on with it normally. It's when they have to do it themselves, that's when I don't like it, because it's always the same. It's always the same premise of like, we've got to choreograph this. I'm the team captain, but I have all these ideas. Oh my God, there's too many clashes of ideas. Are we going to be able to do it? And then it will always cut to the team captain being like, are we going to be able to do it? I don't know. Then they always end up doing it fine on the main stage on the day. And then of course, before you know it, it's time for the challenge itself. We have Jonathan Bailey as a guest judge of Bridgerton fame. I've never watched Bridgerton before, but maybe I will. Maybe I will after this one. I don't know. I have to say, I'm loving currently on Twitter at the moment the little rivalry between Pangina and Janie for his affections. It's very funny. And so we have the musical West End Wendy's. For this one, I'm just going to talk about the Queen's performance in the episode overall, be it both in the musical and on the runway. So I'm just going to sort of do it all in one fell swoop. Up first, we have Pangina Heels as Little Orphan Fanny. Or is it Whittle Orphan? I don't know. Some of these names. Pangina was really good though. Like, she opened the show and she did it amazingly. I think she had so much character and so much energy in her performance, and I really, really enjoyed it. What's great about Pangina is she's very, very polished and she's very beautiful, but she's not afraid to get a bit ugly and get a bit dirty as well. And I really appreciated that. I thought Pangina did a fantastic job this week. I think she was definitely one of the best for sure. Her runway look as well was gorgeous. Someone said it looked a little bit like Rock'em Sakura's look from the ball challenge, that really, really messy one that she did. But like a sort of a polished version of it. And yeah, I can absolutely see that. You know, Pangina continues to go from strength to strength each week, and I really appreciate that because I was a fan of her before this, so I'm really glad to see that she's doing well. Up next is Bag of Chips as Tracy Fatberg, a parody of Hairspray. I haven't seen Hairspray, to be honest. In fact, the majority of these musicals I haven't actually seen. Bag of Chips. Bagger's performance to me was I do, and I said this last week and I said it the week before, so I feel like I'm a bit of a broken record, but I really do think Bagger should have been in the bottom two again this week. Week 1, maybe not so much, but week 2 and definitely week 3, I really do think, you know, her performance was quite lackluster to me. She was covering her eyes with the hair. I do understand the Hairspray hairstyles that they wear in that musical, but you know, you could barely see her eyes, you could barely see the expression on her face. She very obviously didn't want to do that role as well, and even in the Untucked bit, she was very much like still sort of quite sour about it. And it wasn't a bad role at all, it was a fun, upbeat part, so like, I didn't really get what the problem was. However, having said that, you know, in the Untucked bit, they did clock Bagger on her attitude, and she apologised, and I think, you know, she could see where she was going wrong, so at least I'm glad the girls brought it up. Bagger's runway look, I actually didn't mind the runway look so much. I mean, it's kind of similar to what I've got on right now, actually. The only thing I didn't really like about Bagger's runway look was the hair choice. The sort of wet look that she had didn't really go with the actual outfit itself. Like, I wouldn't wear a wet look hair with something like this now, because it would be a bit of an odd pairing. But I thought she looked, you know, I thought she looked nice. I mean, it wasn't my favourite, but out of what she's worn so far on the runway, it probably was my favourite out of her looks. You know, and I don't want my videos to sound like I'm really hating on Bagger, because I don't hate Bagger, and like I said before, this is just a reality TV show that's been edited. So it's not an attack on her character or anything like that. But I haven't really enjoyed what we've been seeing thus far. Up next was Jujubee as Lally Bowles, the parody of Sally Bowles from Cabaret. I have seen Cabaret, so. And I thought Jujubee did okay this week, to be honest. I wouldn't have had her in the bottom 2 myself personally. I thought, yeah, the performance wasn't amazing, but I thought she did a good job of it. I thought her face was really good. Like she had painted herself to look like Liza really well, I thought. And really, I think, you know, Jujubee to me was a solid safe in terms of her performance. And I thought they were quite harsh. And you could see in the Untucked section as well, Jujubee really did sort of look very upset, and I felt really bad for her. Well, I wanted to reach into my TV and just give her a hug because she looked so upset. Jujubee's runway, however, wasn't wild about that so much. I've seen a lot of people online being very negative about it, and whilst it is not a look I particularly think is that great, especially for Drag Race, people do need to lay off Jujubee a little bit though, because you've got to bear in mind, after she did All Stars 5, that was filmed, I believe, in 2019, but it didn't air until 2020, and when it was airing, it was right, you know, in the middle of a pandemic. So between now and then, obviously things have changed. People are saying, how did Jujubee go from this in All Stars 5 to this in UK versus the World? And I'm thinking, well, All Stars 5 wasn't that long ago, and the Queens spend a lot of money to do Drag Race. And realistically, I don't know how much of that Jujubee could have, you know, broke even with because of the pandemic. I mean, obviously, I don't know, and that could be a whole different video in itself, couldn't it? But I think people do need to lay off Jujubee because, you know, Queens, just because you're on Drag Race, it doesn't mean you can magic up outfits and looks and turn it every single time. Would you still be bringing it on your 4th time? I mean, I don't know. So it's just one of those things where it's like, yeah, I get the criticism, but lay off her a little bit. You know, I really love Jujubee. I've said it before. It's hard to see her sort of folding in the way she is. And because she's still here, I really hope that next week she's able to bring it again. After that, we had Blue Hydrangea as Mariah Von Treppy, a Sound of Music parody. I thought Blue did a really good job this week, actually, and initially I thought she was going to be one of the top queens. I thought she played the character really, really well. I thought her runway look was absolutely lovely as well. With that blue and orange together, that was probably the best runway look of the week, actually, I think. And it's a little bit frustrating because Blue Hydrangea's doing so well. I feel like she's done well every week, but she isn't getting the necessary praise because she's always being called as safe. And like, to that end, you know, this week there was only 7 of them. I don't know why they didn't just critique all of them, rather than have just Blue and Bagger go for safe, but whatever. And then up next we had Mohart as Dr. Spankenspurter. Never want to say that name again. I thought Monique did a decent job. There was the mistake that she made with the split, which was unfortunate because I think otherwise she was doing quite well. I'm very glad that she wasn't in the bottom 2. I know she got the critique and was sort of in that bit of a danger zone between safe and bottom 2, but I'm glad that she was kept as safe. I loved her runway this week as well. I thought she looked amazing. I loved how she was able to reference Monsters Inc. without saying the name because of, I assume because of copyright. I thought her makeup was absolutely gorgeous as well. And Mo keeps delivering really hard on the runways so far this season. And I really love to see it. I'm glad that she wasn't in the bottom 2 this week because it would have been a shame, I think, if she had been. Then our penultimate queen was fellow top 2 Janie Jacquet as Meryl Streep. Not a character, just Meryl Streep. Literally just Meryl Streep. Obviously in her Mamma Mia get-up as well. I thought she did a fantastic job. She took a role that could have very easily been a bit boring or not gone off very well, I think. But she did it. She delivered it really, really well. It was all the little nuances and little details that she did, especially like the hands in the pockets of the dungarees. I thought that was so good. And she looked just like her, I thought, as well. Admittedly a bit younger, because of course she is, but like, I thought she looked amazing. And I really like as well what Janie did on the runway this week. Yes, it is a little bit simple, but I think she does simple very well. She executes it very well. If you're going to do something that is simple and straightforward, then you've got to make it very streamlined and very polished looking, and that's what Janie does. And I really, really liked seeing Janie do well this week. I thought it was great to see, especially after week 1. There was no denying to me that Janie was the right one in the top 2. I thought she was fantastic. And lastly, we have Jimbo, our dearly departed, controversially departed Queen Jimbo, as Dodo the dog. I think Jimbo was rightfully in the bottom 2 this week. I got the critique of, like, you know, her holding up the basket in front of her face for that long wasn't a very good choice. And we've seen, you know, from the lip syncs as well, Jimbo is not the best dancer in the world as well. So for her to land in the bottom 2, as disappointing as it is to see, I absolutely understood it. I thought her runway look was very good though. It was creative. It was a creative take on the theme. She was able to do a creative look without going too, like, so far off the mark, if that makes sense. So the runway presentation is over. The judges give their critiques, and obviously before this, Bagger and Blue are called safe. Mo is given some sort of negative critiques, but ultimately called safe. Janie Jacquet and Pangina Heels are the top 2 of the week, and Jimbo and Jujubee are the bottom 2 of the week. Definitely agree with the top 2. I think Pangina and Janie both did really well. The only other person I would maybe consider to be in the top would have been Blue, but I don't know whose place she would have taken. I don't know who I would swap out for Blue. But Blue deserves to be critiqued on stage just to be told she did a good job, I think, but there you go. It's interesting as well now because both Pangina and Janie are in the top 2 for the second time, so they are very quickly establishing themselves as competitors. And then in the bottom 2 we have Jimbo and Jujubee. Like I said already, I agreed with Jimbo's placement. Despite the fact that Jimbo has, obviously up until this point, done very well in the competition, I think she was deservedly in the bottom 2 this time. Jujubee, I don't think it was as deserved. I do think Bagger should have been in the bottom 2 instead of Jujubee. I would have basically swapped Bagger and Juju's placements around this episode. We have the deliberations, and there's, of course, a bit of friction. Jujubee is very conscious that Jimbo had both picked Janie and Jujubee's lipsticks in the past. And it's a very difficult decision because, really, you think, like, even though I don't agree with her being in the bottom 2, it was a very obvious choice that Jujubee should have been chosen because it was her second time in a row versus Jimbo's first, and Jimbo had, you know, had 2 top 2 placements. I mean, I count them as wins. I know he didn't receive a repeater badge, but I count them as wins. So like the decision should make itself really, if you're going on track record. However, with the whole sort of lipstick issue from the start of the episode, with Jimbo picking Jujubee despite the alliance, that I think is what throws everything into question. Like I don't think anybody, or at least anyone who spoke about it feels that they can trust Jimbo anymore. I definitely think that played a very big part in what happened. So the queens return to the main stage. Janie and Pangina lip sync to We Like to Party by the Venga Boys, which when that song started, like, honestly, I just laughed like throughout the lip sync because I was like, what? This is such a random song to choose for a lip sync on Drag Race. I loved it. I was very entertained. But it was just so like, hang on. Absolutely loved Janie's choreography, you know, doing this business. It felt very fitting to the music. Somebody on my Twitter said that it was like watching a year 6 school disco, and I was like, yeah, but that's what the Venga Boys are. The Venga Boys were year 6 school disco, like, to the T. Pangina, though, absolutely won the lip sync when she was doing her whacking and her voguing and all that stuff with like a dead serious face as well to the Venga Boys. I loved it. I thought it was great. So the lip sync is over. Pangina is declared the winner. She is the recipient of a shiny gold repeater badge. And the time comes for her to reveal who she has chosen to be eliminated. And the queen's lipstick she pulls is Jimbo. In an elimination which would be shocking had like the events earlier in the episode not sort of spelled it out. Like I said at the start of the episode, the writing was on the wall for Jimbo. So I thought, well, as soon as they landed the bottom 2, that is it. So Pangina pulling Jimbo's lipstick wasn't a shock in that respect. It's still shocking that it happened. Like, I was still like, what? Oh my God. Because Jimbo had been doing so well. To be eliminated in episode 3 is quite the gag. And it is disappointing, of course, because because he has done so well. But that is the name of the game, and Pangina had her reasons. I feel like the reasons for sending Jimbo home are probably due to sort of like a lack of trust. I don't know if there's a possibility as well that maybe she sent Jimbo home because he was competition. I don't know. I'm sure we'll find out. I'll be very interested to see actually who Janie picked. Because I feel like Janie, just predicting here, I feel like Janie probably made the same choice. But we will see. And then another episode ends and we lose a very strong contender. So it'll be interesting to see what happens from here on out. I don't think it's a case of like, now that Jimbo's gone, the competition's blown wide open, because Pangina was already doing really well. And even if Jimbo hadn't gone this week, Pangina would overtake them in terms of sort of their placement in their statistics. Yeah, Janie is emerging as a contender. Bagger and Blue and Mo are sort of fading into the background a little bit as well, so it'll be interesting to see what happens with them going forward. Next week we have Snatch Game as well, which is always a Drag Race staple, so that should be interesting. You know, we have a previous Snatch Game winner among us with Bag of Chips. We would have had one with Jimbo too, but there we go. And that brings us to the end of another Drag Race review as well. It's been quite a chaotic episode this time, but we got there. We are halfway through the competition already as well, so there's only 3 more episodes left, and then we will have a winner. So yes, it's gone somewhat quickly. Until next time, I have been ElliXia Q Valentine. Thank you very much for tuning in and watching. And as always, stay safe and stay lovely. I've been ElliXia Q Valentine, and of course, please book me. Mwah.